How much does freedom cost if its price is life itself? And who decides where courage ends and defiance begins? Baghdad, September 27, 2018. The city breathes heat, dust, and tension. On a narrow street in the Kamsara district, a white Porsche crawls forward as though it senses eyes on it. In the next moment, 3 shots. Sharp, cold, no warning. The car jolts to a stop. Behind the wheel, Tara Fares, a 22-year-old model and influencer, too vivid for a world where women are expected to exist in the shadows. Around her, silence. Her phone still pulses with alerts, likes, comments, perfume ads, as though life is still ticking onward. Who pulled the trigger? And more importantly, why? Love, jealousy, religion? Or simply hatred for a freedom that sounded too loud in her voice? Baghdad is used to explosions, but that day the city froze. Because they didn't just kill a young woman, they killed a symbol of what cannot be tamed. And this story, it isn't just about death. It's about how terrifying it is to live when daring to be yourself might get you shot at point blank. Baghdad, a city where past and present collide on every corner. Here, new malls rise beside bombed-out blocks, and a woman's life is measured not in years, but by how much deviation she's permitted. In Iraq's capital, anything tied to women's independence is seen as a provocation to a system where the man remains the center and the woman his shadow. Iraq's society, worn down by decades of conflict and instability, has evolved into a system of total control. In every home, at every marketplace, in every school, there exists an unwritten code. Don't stand out, don't question, don't be noticed. A woman can study, work, run a business, but her safety depends directly on how well she aligns with the expectations of family, neighbors, and religious community. Religion and tradition, fused together, became powerful levers of authority, where faith intertwines with fear, shaping the destiny of women from childhood. Any sign of autonomy is viewed as a breach of order, and the punishment isn't by law, it's by shame, violence, or even death. After Saddam Hussein's fall in 2003, Baghdad formally adopted democratic institutions, but in practice, the state fell under the sway of religious factions and armed militias. These forces effectively dictate what is allowed and what is forbidden. Their notions of honor and duty often replace the rule of law. For women, this means life under constant surveillance. If a young woman laughs too loudly, posts her photo online, or leaves home unaccompanied, she risks becoming a target. A society scarred by war seeks control wherever it can, and that control often focuses on women. In households, conversations center not on a daughter's education, but on her reputation. Girls are taught early to avoid talking to men, not to meet eyes, not to argue. Any deviation is seen as a threat to family honor. By the early 2000s, Baghdad had become a city torn by internal contradictions. On one hand, the internet, fashion, and social media emerged. A new generation was beginning to demand a different life. On the other hand, the old laws of honor hadn't vanished. On the streets, you might see women in jeans and wearing makeup, but behind every such choice lay a risk: condemnation, assault, exile. For many young Iraqi women, the internet became the only space where they could try to be themselves. But even there, their freedom was an illusion. Every photo, every comment could trigger threats. There was no one to protect them. The police often refused to take reports, dismissing such cases as family matters. In this tension, a generation of women was growing up aware that the right to self-expression and life demanded enormous effort. They understood that in their reality, courage borders on danger. Tara Fares became one of those who dared to break the silence. But even before her name became known around the world, the country she grew up in had already learned to deal harshly with those who dared to be free. Baghdad remains a city where a woman must be cautious even in her thoughts. Here, the resolve to live by one's own rules becomes a test, not metaphorical, but literal. And every woman who steps beyond what is allowed knows a single forward step may be her last. Zayuna, East Baghdad, 1996. In a modest apartment lives a large family, a father from Iran, a mother from Lebanon, and 7 children, 3 sons, 3 daughters, and the youngest, a girl named Tara. The younger siblings share one bedroom. The older ones help with chores. The family was of Christian origin, but at age 6, Tara converted to Islam. This change was documented formally and in everyday life. Religious classes, new customs, a different prayer schedule. For little Tara, it became simply another must in the daily routine. Her childhood unfolded under a constant shroud of anxiety, with reports of military operations and checkpoints on the streets. At home, there were simple rules: study, help her mother, and return home before dark. The television was only turned on for news or dramas. Music was played quietly. Her clothing was modest, and the outfits for celebrations were picked together with the older relatives. Every trip required permission. Addresses were scribbled on a slip of paper by the door. School became Tara's first step toward independence. The commute back and forth, new friends, teachers, extracurriculars. On her way from school, Tara's mother often overheard neighbors and acquaintances repeat the same phrase: "Your daughter is so beautiful. Marry her to my son." This wasn't just praise, but a marriage proposal. Her mother answered evasively, but the notion of marriage solidified in the girl's mind. Everyone around her expected her engagement. Conversations about marriage became part of her growing up, as inevitable as the changing of seasons. In the household, everything followed strict tradition. The older girls taught the younger ones how to manage chores, while the boys handled practical tasks. Their father demanded discipline and respect for heritage. Family meals were shared, conversations were brief, and personal feelings were never brought to the table. The outside world was judged through one lens, proper or improper, and the family's reputation was treated like a fragile resource that could be destroyed with a single wrong move. In elementary school, Tara was diligent. Her notebooks were neat, she loved drawing, and she took part in school plays. Teachers praised her confidence and ability to learn quickly. Yet, beneath every achievement came a constant reminder of the importance of proper behavior. Any activity that could make Tara stand out was judged through the lens of family values and public opinion. Teenage years brought even more restrictions. Late outings were forbidden, phones were checked, and curfew was never negotiable. Her notebooks filled with sketches of outfits and hairstyles, but these interests were kept hidden because showing personal taste sparked conflict. Weekends were spent with relatives where the topic of Tara's marriage came up again and again. They already spoke to her as a future bride, ignoring her passion for photography and fashion. By the time she entered high school, one rule was firmly established: following social norms was the safest path. But inside Tara, an opposite instinct was growing: the urge to make her own choices. She didn't discuss it with anyone. It only surfaced in small ways: determination in her studies, attention to her appearance, a desire to earn her own money. Conversations about marriage became more frequent and specific, and in her family, turning 16 was seen as the beginning of adult decisions. This is how the foundation of her story was built: a large family with immigrant roots, a religious shift at a young age, strict household routines, and early expectations of a marriage arrangement. On the surface, it was a typical story of the Zayuna district. But here is where the conflict took root, between the path she was given and the life she wanted, soon to erupt into the forefront. Tara was 16 when they married her off. No discussions, no choice. Her relatives believed it was the right thing to do. The husband was older, wealthy, from a respected family. She stayed silent, knowing refusal wasn't an option. From that day forward, her life no longer belonged to her. At first, it looked like a formality: house, relatives, tradition, but it quickly became clear this wasn't a family. It was a cage. Her husband controlled every step, banned phone calls, restricted visits, and demanded obedience. Any word he didn't like became an excuse for humiliation. Tara learned to live without the right to an opinion. The mistreatment became routine, and silence became her method of survival. She stopped looking people in the eyes, stopped talking about the future. Pregnancy brought Tara a moment of relief. At 17, she gave birth to a baby boy, Amir. For a short while, being with him was the only time she felt truly alive. But her husband's jealousy, even toward their child, destroyed that fragile sense of peace. He didn't want to share her attention. The arguments turned volatile. After one particularly dangerous incident, Tara ran to her parents' home. Her family hid her, hoping the situation would calm down. But just weeks later, her husband showed up with armed men. They stormed the house, shouting that the child belongs to the father. Amir was torn from her arms. That moment marked the end of Tara's fear and the beginning of something else: resistance. She had lost her son, but she realized she couldn't stay silent anymore. That night became the breaking point. She made a decision to leave for good, anywhere, as long as she never again belonged to anyone. After separating from her husband and losing her son, Tara's family weighed the risks and decided to leave. Staying in Baghdad meant constant threats and no real legal protection. The plan was set quickly, quietly, no goodbyes, no explanations to neighbors. The first destination was Turkey. There, they searched for temporary housing, applied for residence permits, and scouted job markets. Tara didn't count on formal job assistance. Instead, she built a portfolio, did test shoots, and landed small gigs with local brands. Her looks and work ethic helped her book short-term contracts, catalog shoots, runway shows, beauty campaigns. The pay was inconsistent, but far better than random side jobs. At the same time, her family explored options in Greece, evaluating legal status pathways, testing the healthcare system, and considering the future for the younger siblings. It wasn't a forever move, but a backup plan. Some relatives stayed in Turkey, others traveled with Tara. They split costs and responsibilities to avoid being fully dependent on one country or one immigration system. Jordan became a turning point for Tara. There, she found a way to secure both her family's safety and her own financial independence. After booking a few major campaigns, she saved up enough to put a down payment on an apartment. The purchase was legally secured, ensuring the property couldn't be taken from her by anyone. It was the first asset that was fully hers, and hers alone. From then on, modeling wasn't a side gig. Tara ran it like a business. She signed contracts directly and through agencies, scheduled shoots, handled prepayments and final invoices, and made sure every photo met her standards. She built a professional reputation based on discipline, always on time, always prepared, never causing drama on set. By the next season, she had regular clients, brands that trusted her enough to skip castings. Her work in Turkey and Jordan complemented each other. Some brands preferred coastal shoots, others booked her for studio sessions in Amman. Tara was no longer just surviving, she was rising. The family slowly stopped living out of suitcases. In Jordan, they began to settle in. The children got access to schooling, and the older ones helped around the house. Financial struggles didn't disappear, but they became more manageable. Rent, utilities, food, all planned for in advance. Tara learned how to navigate the seasonal nature of the fashion industry and set aside money for unexpected expenses. Still, Iraq never left her mind. The temporary safety of life abroad couldn't replace the feeling of home. She began analyzing the possibilities of building a career back in her homeland. On the surface, her modeling work was progressing well, but her core goal remained unchanged: to reclaim control of her life in the place where she was born and raised. The question wasn't if she would return, but when and under what conditions. Once she had enough experience, contacts, and some financial stability, Tara decided it was time. She planned the return as a working trip with long-term potential: shoots, collaborations with photographers, new publications, and local projects. Her family kept their Jordan apartment as a fallback option. The path had been long: Turkey, Greece, Jordan, and now Baghdad. This wasn't some impulsive move. It was a calculated step after years of rebuilding life from scratch. In 2014, Tara returned to the Iraqi capital and entered the Miss Baghdad beauty pageant. The event had a semi-official status since the National Miss Iraq competition had been discontinued in 1978 and wasn't set to resume until 2015. So this pageant wasn't officially registered. In the final round, Tara placed second, earning the title of first runner-up. While it didn't give her national recognition, it instantly put her in the spotlight. Local media began writing about her. Behind-the-scenes photos from the contest spread quickly through community pages online. Photographers started adding her name to their call lists. The weeks that followed showed just how fast public opinion moves in Baghdad. Curiosity about the fresh face was quickly mixed with gossip. People weren't just talking about her looks, they dug into her past, her marital status, her habits, her social circle. Invitations for shoots and interviews rolled in, alongside attempts to label her. But in professional circles, it actually worked in her favor. Her name became familiar. Her portfolio grew with runway shots, studio photos, editorial work. By 2015, she applied for Miss Iraq, the national pageant now finally resuming after decades. And that's when her ex-husband released one of their wedding photos publicly. The intent was clear: to discredit her as a contestant and regain control of her public image. The photo stirred a storm of reactions online. Some demanded her removal for moral reasons. Others defended her right to compete as a divorced woman equal to any other. The pageant organizers didn't make the scandal a central issue, but the incident firmly cemented Tara's name in the public conversation. The photo incident wasn't just important for what it showed, it was critical because of what it caused. It revealed how, in Iraq, a woman's private life can be weaponized and how quickly personal matters spill into the public arena. But Tara didn't disappear from the spotlight. She didn't stop working. She kept showing up on set. For some brands, she became a risk. For others, she was an opportunity. A name sparking media buzz meant one thing: reach. By the end of 2015, her rise to fame was no longer a fluke. It was a system. She was working with a team of professionals, makeup artists, stylists, signing off on looks, scheduling shoots, approving what went public. Still, a bureaucratic hurdle remained. Her name wasn't listed in official archives of past national pageants. That's because she earned the first runner-up Miss Baghdad title during a period when beauty contests weren't officially registered by the state. Public reaction to her growing presence stayed mixed. Criticism and praise existed side by side. New photo shoots sparked just as much backlash as they did excitement. But for Tara, this was the beginning of her public life inside Iraq. She was no longer just a model working abroad. She was now a figure on the local stage, a face people talked about, followed, and judged. Her next goal was clear: to find her own voice and build an identity that didn't depend on anyone's approval. That became the core of her next chapter. In 2016, Tara launched an Instagram account. At first, it was just an online portfolio, professional shots and behind-the-scenes clips. But slowly, it evolved. She started adding short videos from her daily life, and the page transformed from a modeling feed into a personal blog. The audience exploded. Within 2 years, she had around 2.8 million followers. People talked about more than her fashion. They talked about her courage. In a country where women's independence still sparks controversy, she became a symbol. In her bio, one line stood out. It became her manifesto: "Life is short, and I'm doing what I want with mine." The content stayed relatable: makeup, fashion, fitness, everyday life. But for many young Iraqi women, it was more than a beauty blog. It was an example of a woman speaking for herself, unfiltered, unapologetic, and not bending to society's expectations. Over time, Tara began landing major ad campaigns. Salons, clothing brands, beauty companies all wanted to work with her. But she set clear boundaries: no contracts that required her to cover her tattoos or change her style. She lost some deals because of it, but what she gained was worth more: a reputation as a woman who stood her ground. Her content followed a tight schedule: photos, stories, live streams. Tara spoke directly to her followers, answering questions, sharing tips. Her voice was steady, unapologetic. In one clip, she says, "I'm not hurting anyone. So why does someone else get to decide how I live?" To some, she was the face of a new, liberated woman. To others, she was a provocation. But no one stayed indifferent. Tara understood that being in the public eye came with a price, but she kept running her blog the same way she lived her life: openly, directly, and on her own terms. As her fame grew, Tara started facing the darker side of visibility: a wave of hate and threats. Hundreds of comments flooded her posts: accusations of indecency, death threats, attempts to intimidate her into silence. Every photo was picked apart: a tattoo, bare shoulders, dyed hair, each one labeled a disgrace. One photo in particular sparked outrage. It showed her from behind, partially uncovered, taken during the month of Ramadan. Conservative bloggers called it an insult to faith. Some launched online campaigns demanding her account be taken down. Threatening messages poured in daily. Tara didn't stay silent. In her replies, she wrote openly: no one should be forced to follow someone else's rules. In one post, she addressed the country's leaders directly: "I have more honor than those running this country. Stop telling us how to live." That message struck a nerve. It was picked up by Arabic media across the region. The backlash intensified. She was accused of destroying morality, her home address was leaked, brands were pressured to drop her. Some partners backed out. Others, however, stood by her, seeing her as a symbol of independence. Tara kept working. She kept posting. She didn't delete a thing. She said her mission was simple: to prove that women have the right to choose and to be heard. But in an environment of fear and censorship, that mission became an act of defiance. By then, Tara had become the center of a cultural standoff. On one side, millions of followers who saw her as a role model. On the other, radical groups who saw her as a threat to the status quo. And the louder she spoke about freedom, the more people tried to silence her. With her rising fame, the threats that had once been occasional became a daily reality. Her inbox filled not just with insults, but with graphic, detailed threats. Tara told those close to her that she reviewed them every day. Some she ignored, others she documented, but she had no plans to stop. Fear became part of her routine, alongside photo shoots and business meetings. The day before her trip to Baghdad, Tara gets on a call with two of her close friends. The conversation is all business: plans for an upcoming vacation in Malaysia, dates, tickets, hotels. But her friends can't ignore their concern. They remind her about the threats she's been getting in direct messages, questioning whether this trip to the capital is even worth it. Tara's response is calm and firm. "I'm not hurting anyone. I don't have enemies." She explains that her schedule is tight, rescheduling isn't an option, and there's just too much noise online to react to every single message. Her plans for the coming days are mapped out down to the hour. In Baghdad, she has a commercial shoot lined up with a photographer she knows well. After that, a few meetings to finalize branded content. At the same time, she's prepping her next content batch: shopping hauls, beauty segments, short clips from salons. Traveling between Erbil and Baghdad is a routine for her, and the shoots are carefully timed with road conditions in mind. That morning, she shares a few Instagram stories from the car, footage of the open road, stretches of highway through the desert, her usual focused work mood. In her feed, there's a new video of her boyfriend test driving a white Porsche, the same car followers already knew had been a gift from an admirer. The clips from the journey felt like just another day in the life. Packing up, coffee on the go, updates on her next project. Warning signs were still coming in, but Tara didn't shift her plans. No extra security, no date changes, no trimming the schedule. Every phone call that day was strictly business, confirming appointments, checking shoot props, reminding partners about scheduled posts. In private chats, she wrapped up details for the Malaysia trip, penciling in dates, agreeing, "Let's wrap the shoot first, then book the tickets." That same day, new comments appeared under old posts. The usual mix: provocations and thinly veiled warnings. Tara didn't respond. By evening, as she entered the city, she turned the camera back on for a few quick shots of the drive. Her familiar, on the way to set format that her audience had come to expect. Her meetings were confirmed. The shoot post-announcement pipeline was locked in. She finished her last calls, with the photographer and her loved ones, but something felt off. There was tension in the air. The flood of online threats didn't seem to align with her decision to move forward as planned. And then, she reached the neighborhood where the final part of her day was scheduled. There were only a few work tasks left. Some follow-ups from brand partners. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. But in that moment, right there on that street, the distance between online noise and real-world danger vanished. In the first few hours after Tara's murder, police began gathering evidence, reviewing surveillance footage from cameras placed along the route her Porsche had taken. One video showed a motorcycle carrying two riders trailing behind her car. The bike briefly pulled up next to the driver's side window. Then, 3 gunshots. The suspects vanished down a nearby street. Investigators matched footage from various angles with witness statements. A suspect description was created and shared with law enforcement units. Hospitals and motorcycle repair shops were checked. Phone records were requested from cellular providers to trace calls and track signals in the area at the time of the crime. But the murder weapon and the motorcycle were never found. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi demanded a full report within 48 hours. The Interior Minister announced that suspects had been identified, calling it a gang-related attack, and claimed arrests were imminent. But the fact that none of Tara's valuables were taken raised doubts. Journalists and human rights advocates questioned that version. Rumors swirled in the streets and online about a possible connection to the powerful al-Hashd al-Shabi militias. No official confirmation was given. The government centralized control of public information. Only one spokesperson was allowed to comment, and they repeatedly deflected questions, citing an ongoing investigation. Months passed. No arrests were made, no forensic findings were released, journalist inquiries were ignored. Witnesses weren't re-interviewed, and investigators failed to connect Tara's murder with other attacks on high-profile women. Requests for access to additional surveillance footage were denied, sometimes on the grounds that no recordings existed. Years later, the case remains unsolved. No suspects, no accountability, and the government's promises remain broken. In August 2018, just weeks before Tara's death, two other well-known Iraqi women were found dead under questionable circumstances. Plastic surgeon Rafif al-Yassiri, known as Barbie, was declared dead from medication complications. Beauty salon owner Rasha al-Hassan reportedly died from a severe cold. Both explanations came with no medical documentation. Investigations were opened, then quickly closed. Their names had already appeared in online discourse as cautionary tales for anyone living openly. On September 25, 2018, just 2 days before Tara's death, human rights activist Suad al-Ali was gunned down in Basra. Police attributed it to a dispute with her ex-husband. But activists reported a pattern. Threats had been made against other women involved in protest movements. All three women, Rafif, Rasha, Suad, shared one thing in common with Tara. They were public, outspoken, independent women with strong voices and real influence. The methods of death varied: gunfire, unexplained medical causes, but the message was the same: intimidation. In the wake of these killings, many female influencers shut down their accounts. Projects were cancelled, brand deals quietly disappeared. Prime Minister al-Abadi mentioned possible coordination between the incidents, but no real actions followed. The potential link between these cases remains a topic of discussion, not investigation. After Tara's death, social media exploded with thousands of posts. Hashtags filled the internet. Students, journalists, bloggers called out the police's failure and pointed to her death as the result of systemic violence. Prime Minister al-Abadi once again promised a thorough investigation. But again, there was no follow-through. Political science professor Hussein Alawi described the killing as a political message, a signal that the government had lost control over armed factions. In Baghdad, women took to the streets holding signs that read, "She wasn't the first." The government stayed silent. Society did the talking. Tara was laid to rest in a Shiite cemetery in Najaf, surrounded by her family, a few friends, and a small group of journalists. Her final diary entry was brief: "God is kind, and whatever is written for me will be right." Her death didn't end her journey. It made her a symbol of resistance, of voice, of women's freedom in Iraq. Her story inspired documentaries, articles, and social campaigns fighting for personal choice. Tara's name became a voice against silence, and even in death, her voice has never been silenced.